like to convene this meeting of the Stockbridge Planning Board for, are we okay? Yeah, for, what is today? The 19th of April.
19th, yeah.
Thank you all for coming. I hope you all had a happy Easter and a good Passover. We actually have everybody present. Carl's here.
Yes.
I consider Carl very present.
Impression.
It's much appreciated.
6:31. Did you say what time is it?
No, I said Tom is here.
Oh. The first item of business is, as usual, approval of the last meeting's minutes of April 5th. Can I have a motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye. Are we supposed to?
Yeah, I suppose I should have asked.
Carl waved.
Defense.
He did.
Carl.
Do we need to take a roll call to approve the minutes?
For Carl, we do. Just Carl.
Yeah, so, but before we do that, I jumped ahead. Does anybody have any comments or corrections or issues with the minutes? If not, then let's vote.
Bill,
Yes.
Gary,
Aye.
Marie,
Aye.
Kate,
Aye.
Nancy,
Aye.
Wayne,
Aye.
Carl.
Aye.
Okay,
Okay, thank you. As we discussed a few minutes ago, just before we went on the record, the sign bylaw is being deferred to a later meeting. The discussion of the sign bylaw. The next item is this discussion of the meeting or discussions with the Conservation Commission regarding the responsibility for the Lakes and Ponds Overlay District, which is presently in our bailiwick. And Maria, I know you were at a Concom meeting recently, and this came up. Would you like to share what's on the
Yeah, I
minds?
was on the, their regular Tuesday night, last Tuesday meeting. And we had talked, and Bill had spoken with Ron Broker about maybe they were better equipped to do the Lake and Pond Overlay District. And we kind of talked about that. And so I guess Bill had mentioned to Ron, so they brought that up because they also were concerned with 8 Hawthorne Road, 8 Hawthorne Street. They were giving them a permit and they had the same take on it as our committee did. And they were discussing the language of the LPOD lots around Stockbridge Bowl. And we're concerned with size and amount of trees coming down, and all of that permitted by our bylaw, and how should we handle that? So that was discussed, and they included me in their discussion, and we both said we would like to meet together, the two committees, and see if we can come up with some common language and thoughts about how we want to go forward. They were concerned that, pretty soon there's not going to be a tree surrounding the bowl. And they asked if we could meet together. We can either come to our meeting on a Tuesday, or we can go to their meeting on a Tuesday or some other time, but they did ask to meet with us, and they were interested. They did not say that they, were really, really willing to take over the LPOD, because they have a lot of stuff. They have all the swamps and all the wetlands and all the lakes and all the brooks, and, so that was just talked about, but nothing came of that. I mean, nothing definitive came of that. Mm-hmm. But they really were very interested in getting together with our committee and trying to come up with, so we're both looking at the same stuff with different eyes, but common we agree on the common language of what's happening. So I would like to try to go forward with having a meeting with the two and just see how they feel about things. I think they all seemed very willing to meet with us.
Yeah, good.
Do we know how it originated that this is our responsibility? I'm just curious how it came about, why that wouldn't originally be in.
It was this way when I came. I don't know.
I
Gary,
know
was
the
it
history of
always?
it. I'm sure it was
Been that way for
long ago.
Because I've been
Yeah.
on the board.
You know, I think that, so I grew up on the lake, and at a certain point, you started to see these very large houses going up, in particular the ones by the island, which are white. You know, they really stand out. So my recollection was that at that time, there was starting to be discussion, you know, cottages were being.
How long
torn
ago was
down.
that, Kate?
That was in the, I'm gonna say that was like in the late 70s, early 80s. something.
Oh,
Okay, and my guess is that I actually remember at that time, I mean, you know, of course, I was a lot younger, talking to Jack Spencer, who was one of my teachers at Monument and who was on the planning board, about this issue. And a lot of the lake dwellers were, you know, concerned. And I wouldn't be surprised, I don't know for sure, his daughter might, you know, might be worth giving her a call. I wouldn't be surprised if Jack, you know, who was a very active planning board member, if he had a hand in it.
Just curious.
Yeah, I don't know for sure,
And
but
a hand in creating the bylaw and placing it with the planning board as opposed to the
he was on the
Concom.
planning board,
Yeah.
yeah. So I wouldn't surprise.
do all towns that have lakes have a lake and pond overlay district, or is that something?
No, I don't, definitely not. I mean, one of the
I mean,
things
this is
that I picked
kind of
up,
unique to us, to Stockbridge, or not?
I don't know, but one of the things, you know, attending these workshops that I picked up was
Yeah.
that I was probably the only planning board member there. It was mostly, you know, Conservation Commission members dealing with, you know, wetlands and streams and ponds and lakes and so on, so.
Hey, do you think Judy Spencer had something to do with it?
She might have, I mean, if you think about the bog and,
Not exactly, you know.
yeah,
Whatever.
yeah. I mean, I think it would be worth contacting, I think Jack's daughter still teaches at math at Monument, right?
And I don't know what consequence it has, really, but I was just curious how that landed with us and if there was a reason that it landed with us.
If it was with the Concom before and came to us, or
And an old town report to see if,
Yeah, good point, yeah.
it seems like it would be a Concom issue.
in one of the old town reports, maybe there would be some inkling of that. Or at least maybe we could find somebody that's still living that.
Is there a collection of old town reports in the library or,
I think we've got them all here.
Teresa has
Teresa's
them.
got them all.
Yeah,
oh, she does?
yeah, Terry emailed me, right?
I
Okay.
didn't mean to interrupt you if you.
No, that was just it, and, you know, kind of everybody agreed this would be a good thing to try to discuss and
Yeah.
see.
I
Do
think that's great.
do we want to,
I think dialogue is really crucial here, because, I mean, we obviously have a big overlap. These two boards' respective responsibilities.
so do we all agree we should talk with the Concom about this?
Definitely.
Do we want to try to set a date or at least propose a date that they may be able to,
Yeah. Let's invite them to our meeting,
maybe the
unless
next
we've got
one?
a ton of stuff. Actually,
Do you know,
would they be
Jennifer?
interested in any of your report from,
Oh, they know.
but you're doing that.
Okay.
But this, what you're suggesting, Marie, is segues quite nicely with.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know if at our May 3rd meeting, we have a large agenda?
Kara's gonna speak.
Right?
Oh, Cara's going to speak.
We're going to talk about, I was going to mention this later. We're going to revive the discussion, at least to determine how we want to think about the Cottajera estate, not necessarily make a decision, just kind of conclude one way or the other on Cottajera estate. That will be on May 3rd.
Right.
There are no special permits, though, that you're aware of?
No,
So why don't we try to invite them to our May 3rd meeting?
Yeah, okay.
Copies will give everybody.
And if they want to counter propose another date, we'll
Yep.
we'll listen, but can
You
you
make some predictions.
Sure, want me to, yeah.
please?
Yep, I can call Sally or I can call Ron.
Thank
I'd
you.
be glad to see. So they would come to our meeting at 6:30.
Right.
We would,
We could get them
Start with
early
them.
in the agenda so they wouldn't have to stick
yeah,
around
right,
for
right.
an hour and a half.
As long as we don't have too much intel.
It doesn't sound like we do.
Okay. Okay.
Okay, any other points on this? Questions?
Do we have
for-
anything we wanted to add to that when I speak with them? Do we want to say anything about it or just?
Well, I think
You know, we should have something about what we're going to talk about instead of just, we need a list of, you want to get together with me and come up with something?
Sure. I mean, to me, it's as, yes, if you.
Not a list, but I think we shouldn't just like throw it out there because then we just do this thing that we do all the time, talk and never get anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, I guess in the end, it's a simple yes or no. Do you want it or don't you? And if.
Well, it being
and
the question.
It being the question, and I don't know, I mean, we can refer them to the bylaw and so that they, if they don't have copies of the bylaw, we should send them copies of the,
Oh,
They have it.
They have it. Oh, they're good at it.
so
Actually,
I'm not sure what else we would
Okay.
say.
All right.
Other than, you
I
know,
think-
we're prepared to consider passing this over if you want it. You know, the last meeting, we talked about this and there was one or two people spoke up about, well, maybe it's nice to have not all of this in one body and, you know, the possibility of, you know,
Yeah, and we also talked about the language a little bit of like total coverage. Actually, Sally had a good suggestion. You know, we talked about 10% coverage or whatever. And she said, you know, in a place like that, they're all special permit lots. Nothing is even much more than a quarter acre. So her kind of suggestion that she sort of threw out there, I mean, it just in the conversation was, you know, maybe it ought to be a case by case situation.
I also feel,
if you've got a half
having
quarter-
thought about this conversation since the last time, I'm not sure that we might not want to consider reducing the lot coverage percentage because, you know, it just seems to be coming out with some, you know, sort of surprising outcomes.
yeah.
Yeah, like a blanket coverage, maybe you need to have it more specific to,
Do it by lots.
I mean, I don't know if that just opens a can of worms.
I think you want to be careful about,
You know, I don't know how you can word it, but I mean, that was just thrown out there.
think
Let
that's-
them do
I think
that.
you want to be very careful. I mean, look, it's a special, to Sally's comment, it is a case by case, is my understanding. It's a special permit each time, and
Yeah.
that's indicates
Right.
it's case by case.
So when we have the language in there that says no more than 10% or 15% or whatever,
If you put up to.
if they put it there at 9.8%.
I mean, one of the problems is that we're not, I mean, I would say that one thing we might want to think about is requiring, I mean, look, this is not an equity thing around the lake, the money is there. So we're not currently requiring a site plan, you know, by a registered licensed surveyor. So you get into the question of how do you measure to the lot lines if you're not even requiring a surveyed plan? So one thing we might want to consider is requiring, you know, a site plan as a starting point for these requests, requiring them to stake the property so that we can see exactly what we're dealing with, as well as stake the footprint of the property, which is what I asked Mark to do for that 8 Hawthorne Road request. But I thought it could have been done more clearly, such that, you know, could actually be measured. And then, you know, potentially we might want to consider an as-built bylaw to make
Got
sure.
confusing with the pink and the green in the existing building
Yes.
Right.
there. I would like to talk to conservation, maybe about their understanding of our bylaw And
Yeah.
if, are we considering the proper elements of that piece of it? And what, how do they think about it, and how I think about it may be a different thing, and then you'd have a
Well-
broader understanding maybe.
That's a good point. You know, if you're willing, Marie and I can sit down together in the next few days or whatever and come up with maybe a short list of bullet points that would guide a discussion when we meet with them on the 3rd, if they agree to meet with us on the 3rd.
Because they were talking about the same kind of thing. I
So
think
one
they're
thing
interested
that,
in-
you know, that sounds fine with me, but one thing I would like to ask that you include on that list is that before we meet, that both boards take the time to review the Lake and Pond Overlay District bylaw, and that we would review the Conservation Commission bylaw, which is in the general bylaws, so that we both have knowledge of what we are dealing, you know, each of us is dealing with.
And we would review the conservation what?
Which piece of it?
Which piece? What do you?
Yeah, so if you look at the general bylaws, it's on page, hold on a second. I did update my bylaws.
In the zoning bylaws?
No, it's in the.
No.
It's in the
general
town bylaws.
And it is on page
Oh, wetland protection?
11.
11. I opened right to it. Yeah, Article 7.
So I think it would be good for us to take a close look at that and,
General bylaws. General bylaws.
and for them to take a close look at the Lake and Pond Overlay District bylaw, so that we all know what
Yeah,
we are one another
Good
is
point.
working with.
Yep.
right.
There's something funny in the bylaws between between the LPOD and, you know, whatever, the 6.5 and the 6.3, where it's not exactly clear that we're requiring a site plan. I mean, any of these applications have come with a site plan, whether the site plan is accurate, you know, is another story, but I feel like, you know, being explicit about requiring a site plan and an accurate building footprint is important.
Right, so my understanding is that
Page 11.
the LPOD does not actually it does not actually require a stamped.
It refers to other sections that do, and those are a little bit contradictory. I'm just looking at them, and it could be kind of more explicit.
Ours. That's
You could say that about a lot of what's in here.
Okay.
I think it would also be worth inviting town council so that it's not, you know, so we're getting some clarity on some of the sticking points that
To
we
this-
might not have
to this
answers
joint
to.
meeting?
I
Invite
don't
her to
think
sit
we're
in.
ready for that, though.
But I mean, you don't think they themselves, Concom, would be explicit enough in,
They're not going to be familiar with, I mean, if you look at, why don't we just start, you know, by looking at one another's bylaws?
Yeah.
And you'll see what I mean, because there's actually, I mean, I'm interested to learn more about the Concom work from the standpoint of enforcement. And there is enforcement written into their bylaw. There's enforcement written into our bylaw too. You know, I was talking to somebody who, you know, I had no idea, told me that Mitt Romney, when he was governor, he started pushing for enforcement because there was a lot of money for municipalities in enforcement. So with the Wetlands Protection Act, he was, you know, that was something that he was interested in. So I think that
one thing
that's another question. Are we willing to enforce these bylaws?
I've been trying to take a ride around to some of these places after a few months. Take a look.
Yeah,
So, I mean, I think if we all made a little more habit of that, that would be a way to police it a little bit if we see something really obvious that, wow, there's no silt fence up or something, you know.
I've done that,
But,
yeah.
Yeah,
it's been interesting to me to see the progression of the site And just to kind of refresh my memory on what we approved, and are they doing that?
Yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah, we kind of chatted a little bit about when we give a permit like that somebody or some two of us on our committee kind of be assigned to sort of keep your eye on it, you know? And Concom is also talking about hiring a conservation agent, which, part-time, which will maybe be able to also observe their enforcement. But I wouldn't mind being assigned to you give permission for this and then kind of everyone, kind of keep your eye on it like you guys are. And then it kind of becomes your special project, or two of us, two on our committee. And anybody else, of course, but if you're really assigned to kind of watch something, it's much less apt to cut down all the trees before you see it,
And you'll remember I was doing compliance issues with the land trust for years. It was a dreadful job. Although it always it gave you an excuse to go out and have a nice walk in the snow all the time. But the fact of the matter is that like you're saying, we have to keep an eye on these things, and the Conservation Commission is on the hook for that. And I think the planning board is to a certain extent too. So.
Right, and if there's no one on the planning board who wants to do that, I mean, the building inspector should also be doing that, so there's that as well.
Yeah.
Even a drive-by, just kind of keep an eye on, doesn't have to be.
I know, I'm just saying that, they both can be done.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think it would be useful if the building inspector got involved, if he's willing. I don't think this is part of his strict area of responsibility, but we could maybe talk him into it.
So Mass General Law, the building inspector, just a reminder, they interpret and enforce the bylaw.
All the bylaws.
The idea of the Conservation Commission, or even potentially with the planning board, bringing in a conservation agent. It's amazing what someone who's actually like out there in the field and, getting a little bit of money and has a camera, can accomplish. So.
At any one time, how many, in the last few years, I'm not going to hold you to this, have we had active LPOD projects underway at any one time in the last few years? Has it been as many as 5 or 6 or 1 or 2? I'm trying to get a sense of if you're right, Kate, about this being Ned's responsibility and it's not grossly too much. If we could say, look, every time we approve a special permit, that it goes to Ned, and we ask that he set up a schedule on his own. It's up to him to monitor compliance with the approval that we've given in our special permit. It doesn't sound like it would be terribly burdensome. What do you think?
Bill, I have to say, I disagree with you. Some of the monitoring work is a little labor intensive. At the land trust, we ended up leaning a lot on Berkshire Natural Resources because, they had someone in the office who could actually like go out and, put on their bean boots and trek through the snow and like look around and take pictures. Not only do you have to go there, look at it, but you also have to photograph it and document it and sort of like see like where things are. I know that there are properties that the Conservation Commission is presumably, open space properties that are there presumably in charge of the supervision of. And then there's the land trust and there's BNRC and but I've done this and it's it's a little bit more work than you'd think, so.
Well, I think there's a difference between volunteer and paid staff maybe. So why don't we put it on a burner to just, it's something to consider.
Yeah.
So Ned, does he enforces the zoning bylaws. Is he gonna, look after your LPOD? Probably not. He will send that to, and quiet. So anything like that would go to conserve, and he'll call Ron and Ron usually
But that
goes
begs the
out.
question of why shouldn't it be?
Well, why shouldn't it be the zoning
to begin
bylaw?
with?
Right.
Right.
I mean,
If that's how he
if they're
manages
putting a building up or they're taking a building down, he always gets a permit application.
Right.
We always get a stamped site plan for anything that people are going to do, outside their building.
They're not, my recollection is that they're not all stamped, but you know what? Another suggestion is to talk to Mike Canales about this. He has a lot of knowledge about, obviously he's the TA, and I'd recommend, getting his input about enforcement and the Lake and Pond Overlay District bylaw.
Yeah.
I don't think Jennifer was done speaking.
That's okay. I'm done.
Are you done? Carl, what did you have? Sorry.
Oh, no, I'm agreeing with Jennifer. The fact of the matter is, with all due respect for Ned, he has a lot on his plate already. I think it's important that we spread out some of these responsibilities in a way that doesn't just make it all like, have to endlessly be over his desk. So
Probably wouldn't.
Well, why don't we do a
hurt us to little more
combination of what
involved.
Marie suggested and,
Yeah, it might not hurt us to be a little more involved in the things we give
Yeah.
permits for.
Yeah.
See how they're
I
coming.
mean, I'll give you an example. Years ago, when I first joined the board, I was down in Beechwood and doing just what, Wayne is describing. And it looked to me like, I think it was actually, within the height, but it looked to me awfully tall. So I called Ned and he said, oh, I need to go down there and take a look. So I don't see that as, a big deal.
it's the dialogue,
But you saw it and were able to tell him. He didn't go around town looking for something that we permitted. I think that's a whole different matter. I don't think we can expect him to go around looking at things we permit, looking to see if anything's wrong, unless it's a building and he's got it inspected or something. But if you saw something that you thought wasn't quite right and then went and said, hey, what do you think? That's different than expecting him to go look at stuff. I don't think he has time to be looking at unless there's something wrong.
So in addition to a camera and good waterproof boots, would we need tape measures?
I don't think we need to go there. But I think, how you can just kind of look and see if things look like what we permitted.
Even I can tell if a silt fence isn't there.
Right.
Yeah.
But
Or trees cut down or.
is the building, 30 feet from a setback or 29 feet? And hell, I don't know without a tape measure.
I would suggest that if we go around and see something that doesn't appear to be right, I think we have the right to maybe ask the architect to clarify, I thought this was going to be such and so. Maybe it wouldn't be such a burden on the homeowner or the architect to clarify if we had a question. And then we're not necessarily, we are policing it and we're maybe solving the issue without a person needing to be hired.
So we would have them come, the contractor come to our meeting and explain it in front of everybody.
And I don't want to have them do that all the time. I don't want to create another cost for people, but if we see something that, hey, this is what we agreed on, then it wouldn't be out of line to have them come clarify it either.
Right, but we wouldn't personally
Yeah, just-
go to the contractor. We would have the meeting.
I mean, I
have them
guess
come to
we
our
should
meeting.
discuss it here first.
Yes.
Say, this is what I saw, what do you remember? And maybe bring back the application to say, didn't we agree on this?
Yes,
I would,
Before we start calling in the
Right.
that's a
architect.
great, that's a
Right.
great point.
So one thing to keep in mind is that with the Conservation Commission, with the Wetlands Protection bylaw, they actually have, if you read it, it seems they have access to properties. We do not.
Oh,
So, that's one difference there.
well,
I think it would be worth talking to Mike and getting his input on this question.
And contractors and builders don't normally like people walking
I
around
look
on
like
their
a
site.
contractor. I'm like,
particularly strangers, yeah.
You want people walking on your tar.
I mean, personally, it's one thing from my standpoint, it's one thing to drive by a place. I'm not sure I would want to be going on to other residential properties. And I don't think I would welcome that role personally. I prefer to have it be here at the town hall with the building, with somebody here. But why don't you find out from Mike, get his take on it?
and do we have a problem? Are we addressing a problem or are we addressing, something that may be out there? I
Yeah.
mean,
Good question.
because if we're creating a body to check on things that don't need checking, then that's another thing too, but
Well, and what's this conservation agent going to do for the Concom?
Well, conservation agents they're officially kind of doing what we were just talking about.
Yeah,
They-
that's what I thought.
They enforce what the conservation, am I right hearing? What the conservation
That approves.
approves. And they're officially people, like Shep Evans was the conservation in Great Barrington, I think. And, when the Conservation Commission approves something, cutting down trees or whatever, it's his job. It's a job to actually go out and be sure it's done okay. And if it's not, then he
If
can
that's the
take it.
case,
But I don't think we have that kind of, well, maybe we do. Never mind.
the planning board?
Yeah,
No, we don't. My point
No,
is that if Concom is going to hire a conservation agent, to me, that argues for giving LPOD
well,
to
yes,
the Concom, so this guy can enforce
right,
everything.
Yes.
right.
Yeah.
We don't
Yeah,
have
that's-
to get our boots wet and take out our tape measures and
If there's somebody-
drop our cameras in the snow.
well, you like to pass the buck.
I'm just trying to create efficiency, but I'll talk to Michael about it.
Yeah. It'd be good to know, just to start, what is doable within the parameters of what we have.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay. Anything else on this? So you'll talk to.
Yes, so I'll talk to Ron and see if we can come together or Sally, and see if we can come together with a combined meeting next time we meet, 2 weeks from tonight.
Yeah.
May 3rd.
We will not meet on the 17th,
Oh,
which
good.
is election day. Right, we don't meet on election day,
Right,
No,
right?
that's correct.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, just by the way. Okay, anything else on that?
No, that was it.
Thank you for
I was hoping,
following up.
Yeah, I was hoping Jamie would be on our meeting tonight so she could have her input too, because she was at the Concom. She's on Concom, of course, but I don't see her on.
Well, can we tell if she's on? We just see 7
She's not,
shapes.
She's not on,
Okay,
because sometimes she does sit in on our meetings.
right. Okay, Kate, do you want to talk about conservation?
Doesn't Nancy talk to regional planning meeting?
Oh, I'm sorry, this will be very brief, I promise you.
Okay.
Nancy?
well, unfortunately, we had talked about the stretch code last week. And I know it was on the agenda of the Berkshire Regional Planning. And so I waited through the whole meeting because it was old business and they didn't bring it up. They didn't speak about it. So I don't have anything to report on it.
Thank you for your report.
Maybe next meeting they will.
Thank you for at least attempting to do your duty.
The rest of it was very interesting, but not about what I was there for.
Not relevant, okay.
All right, hold on a second.
Kate.
All right, give me 1 second to figure this out. All right, so now I'm there, so now I'm gonna go into Zoom. Wait a second. Sorry, guys. Okay, can you see this?
Yes.
All right, so, all right, so let me just get back to where I need to be.
It's nice.
And,
Is that from
Olivia's?
okay,
Olivia's Lookout?
all right, so, all right, so I'll start. So this is a quick summary. As you guys know, I took these workshops, which were hosted by the Massachusetts Association of Conservation Commissions. And so I'm going to just quickly, Bill asked me to summarize, some of the highlights and so on. So I'm going to just try and do that in under 5 minutes. So you can time me if I go over. All right, so to start, because Massachusetts is a home rule state, the Massachusetts Wetlands Protection Act, which was enacted in 1972, is administered by local conservation commissions. And it is modeled on the Clean Water Act, which was enacted around the same time in the 70s. So because of the decades-long issues and concerns with the Stockbridge Bowl, and because the Lake and Pond Overlay District, by law for now at least, falls under the planning board's jurisdiction, I thought that, that would be a good context within which to present some of the information that I learned at these workshops. So for me, the question is, and I hope for you too, why do some of these things matter? And can we improve water quality, conservation best practices, and save money in the long run? So why do we care about these things? There's eutrophication.
Sorry, you got to explain that. I'll stop you right there.
Eutrophication, with those big ears. Cyanobacteria outbreaks, erosion, and sedimentation. So eutrophication is excessive richness of nutrients in a lake or other body of water, frequently due to runoff from the land, which then can lead to a dense growth of plant life and death of animal life from the lack of oxygen. And that's directly from one of the workshops. So cyanobacteria outbreaks, we're all familiar with those, at the lake. But a lot of people don't actually know what cyanobacteria is. So cyanobacteria is blue-green, also referred to as blue-green algae. And these are microscopic organisms that live primarily in fresh water and saltwater at the surface and below. And they usually multiply and bloom when the water is warm, stagnant, and rich in nutrients like phosphorus and nitrogen, which come from sources such as fertilizer runoff and septic tank overflows. Let's see, mouse, will you please work? Let's see, erosion leads to sedimentation, invasives, and loss of habitat. And sedimentation refers to excessive levels of suspended stream sediment or turbidity, or a change in sediment distribution itself. Changing levels of erosion and sedimentation threaten fish, invertebrates, and aquatic vegetation. So just a few more terms. Hydrology, very simply put, hydra is Greek for water, and hydrology is the study of water. Stormwater runoff impacts water quality. Stormwater runoff is generated from rain events and snowmelt that flows over land and impervious surfaces like pavement or rooftops. As that stormwater runoff flows over the land, it picks up pollutants like phosphorus and nitrogen, and that degrades water quality. So stormwater, it can also threaten drinking water supplies. Soil disturbance facilitates erosion with the loss of native plantings, leading to increased invasives. Invasives, and you can sort of see those making their way down that disturbed soil area, are opportunistic and will establish quickly and spread under these conditions. So in this situation, native plantings would have been helpful because they would hold the soil in place, prevent that erosion, as well as helping prevent invasives from getting established there. And then this is a picture I took locally, actually. In this case, this area actually, you can see the erosion. This actually drains into a wetland. So potentially you're going to have sedimentation of that wetland area, which is not good, of course. Riparian buffers, these are strips of forested or vegetated land bordering a body of water, and these are critical to protecting our water resources. The vegetation and root systems in these buffers stabilize the stream bank. They prevent soil from eroding into the water. They also act as a filter to remove pollutants, and they reduce the impacts of flooding. They're also very important to habitat, and they provide food for wildlife and pollinators. And then this is a stream. I pulled this image from the New York State site. But if you look at that vegetation hanging over the shoreline there, that cools those areas along the shoreline, and that's important for fisheries. Okay, almost there. So these are the 8 tenets of the Wetlands Protection Act. And if you look at that list, you can see that almost everything there, except for maybe shellfish, applies to the Stockbridge Bowl.
We have the snails. Don't forget.
I don't know how they fit into that.
Snail is shellfish?
I'm not sure, I can check if you want. That's a shell.
May not be a fish.
I was thinking they were thinking of the ocean shellfish, but I don't know.
We got
So,
clams.
from the standpoint of wildlife protection and the Wetlands Protection Act, habitat is really the key. So to summarize, why does all this matter and why is it worth thinking about? As we know, treatment programs are expensive, whether that's harvesting or using pesticides or dredging, and they're controversial, of course. So it just seems to me that addressing some of these problems at the root cause should be part of the conversation. And the Lake and Pond Overlay District bylaw is a good chance for the Planning Board and the Conservation Commission to work together and be on the same page, so we can make some headway on waterways best practices. So I think, that's it. Thank you.
That's interesting. Thank you.
That's good.
Thank you. Did you participate in the municipal vulnerability
I did.
discussions?
Yeah,
those
I did.
Series of meetings? I think some of the rest of us did too, not all of us, but we had a grant to participate. And if we didn't participate, we wouldn't be eligible for future grants to begin to mitigate some of the issues that we identified collectively. And there's a long laundry list. I got a letter from Mike the other day saying that under the municipal vulnerability process, a group of greenagers are going to examine culverts in town
Yeah.
to determine the adequacy or lack of or inadequacy of culverts in various places. And because we've got a stream running through our property and there's a culvert there, it's actually the Averitt Road Bridge or bridges, which isn't technically our property, but it's nearby. They said don't be surprised if you see greenagers walking through the stream as they do their work later this year. It's a long way of saying, to me, what's going on in Stockbridge Bowl is maybe more important than fixing culverts in town. And I'm just wondering, do we know why some of these issues around Stockbridge Bowl weren't identified as higher priorities for the town in this vulnerability? I mean, my God, it's the,
So culverts are actually, I know that culverts are not the most, sexy topic, but they're actually really critical. Marie knows all about this too. So if you look at Stockbridge Bowl, it is a bowl, and that entire watershed is fed by streams.
right,
And a lot of those streams are influenced by stormwater runoff.
Right.
And a lot of that's culverts.
yeah,
So, so culverts are actually a pretty important sort of first step, as long as, and I know Allison Dixon from the Housatonic Valley Association is involved in that project. She knows a lot about wetlands and waterways,
Yeah.
of course, and I have a lot of faith in her that, given that she's involved, that, they will be looking at, I know that, one of the important things is considering nature-based solutions, because plants can really save us money and provide these ecosystem services.
yeah.
So, culverts are actually, pretty important.
I am sure you're right, and I hadn't thought of it in that context as they relate to the bowl.
Yeah. I mean, there are all sorts of other things that are important too.
That
Yeah.
was sort of my point.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, I'm glad they're looking at culverts, and I'm sure that there will be some improvements that come from this survey.
They will all get bigger, I would imagine.
Probably, you should see the pipe going under the Averitt River Bridge, the Averitt Road Bridge. I mean, it is gigantic.
Yeah.
I want to be able to
Well,
walk through.
I could
when
stand
fish
up in
down
it.
through there.
I think, and not hit my
At
head.
least 6 feet tall.
Yeah.
So, I
It's
mean,
unbelievable.
one of the reasons that some of these, these bridge standards, have these huge, Wayne, I think you're probably familiar with this, right? These huge pipes is so that wildlife can pass through.
And many of the culverts now are bottomless. In other
Right,
words, they're
they should be.
three-sided, so the naturally occurring.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not saying it's wrong. It's just really, really
It's
big.
enormous.
And I'm sure those are good reasons for.
Don't you
for
think
being-
when you have a dam with a lake upstream, shortly upstream of that, that it's important to have a great big culvert?
Yeah,
I mean, think about it.
yeah,
You have a little culvert and something happens to the dam, and wherever your culvert is, a big culvert does fit there. But on the other hand, something happens to that dam,
Well, and when they get to
The one that drains, the one that drains Campusa Bog, not to get off topic here, but past my house, was apparently the front part of a steam engine in the 19th century. And it's very nice. And the greenagers are welcome to come and explore it anytime. It's fun.
Sounds interesting.
One comment on Kate's presentation, that this is going to sound funny coming from me, but I've thought about this a bunch when we've been on these different locations around the lake, and it always wants to be impermeable, but impermeable washes.
Right.
And it's sediment, and it fills up the stone waterways or whatever thing that is catching that water. And I've wondered why we wouldn't embrace some kind of hard surface, because if you make it so that you're collecting water and dispersing it through the collection pond or whatever other means you have to disperse the water slowly and let it go that way, it's to me, it's a better way, because in certain situations, because you're not getting the sediment and all that stuff that erodes out of a non-pervious surface.
yeah,
Well, what you get with impervious surfaces that, is that a faster rate of runoff.
right?
And as that runoff, so the fastest rate, sorry, Wayne.
I know what
I
you're
know,
gonna say.
this is your business, I know. But the fastest rate of runoff is over pavement or rooftops.
Right.
You know, hard surfaces.
Sure.
And then the next fastest would be turf.
But couldn't you
Grass.
collect it, make it so that your rule is that, yes, you can have it, but you're going to collect it in such a way that it then,
Have a big dry well.
Well, that's, one of the things you sometimes have heard me, ask about is, things like rain gardens and bioswales or even,
people hate blacktop, but there is a good spot for it at times. And I just think of that when we go to these different steep driveways. And it might be something to consider if we make accommodation for that runoff. Just a thought.
I wanted to make a comment, when you had your erosion picture. I picked up trash on Rattlesnake today for a week. Have you been down Rattlesnake? That's all that, because they built the road up so high that, and everything, I had to climb down like this far.
Yeah.
Into this much water and mud to pick up cans, but
well,
and it's all running water all down Rattlesnake Mountain Road.
Into that
Going
swamp.
down to the swamp.
And
The
that's-
swamp's all full of
Yes.
Phragmites.
right, that's facilitating.
And there used to be, when I first moved here 25 years ago, there were geese nesting on there. There
that
were
was a
beaver
great
in there.
pond,
Well, they
yeah.
took the beaver out and now all the Phragmites is there and the dam's broken and, but all that runoff and that mud and,
And around the lake, that's all,
It's the same
I
with,
think it all ends up there eventually somehow.
it's the same with Averitt Road. The runoff along Averitt Road, the upper part.
Yes.
Comes right down into Averitt Lake, the
Yeah.
town's water supply.
right. I mean, I think that that's something that a conservation agent can also support is, best practices for these types of situations. And, to Wayne's point, they might say, okay, here's an area where it makes sense to
be
do
black.
some, yeah.
Just a thought, that's
Yeah.
all.
But I think, what you really want is that expertise, driving the
Yeah,
decision-making.
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
not us.
Okay, well, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah.
Any other questions of Kate or anything from the public?
Kate, did you get a lot out of that conference? Was it?
I mean, I signed up for 4 classes, and by the way, thank you, the taxpayers paid for it. I don't take that lightly, so thank you. I would, why don't we talk and I'll give you some input on if you're interested in doing it. Did you have, I have the slides. I can send them to you all if you're interested. They're not, the slides were sort of dependent on commentary from the speakers, but there's some information there. Okay.
It looked interesting.
Okay, I think that concludes our business. I would entertain a motion to adjourn if anybody's
So moved.
interested in adjourning.
Second?
Beat me to. I didn't get to finish my sentence.
He's not
All in
done
favor,
that.
say aye.
Word on
I
that.
intuitively knew what you were going to say.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Gary. Thank you. Time for dinner.